Okay. Okay, so we're starting, and Bill, you've got two computers.
I just turned the other one off. Yeah.
Oh, okay, wonderful, because that was giving us feedback. So thank you for doing that. Thank you, everyone, for joining the call. This is our monthly meeting. We're still in Zoom world for a little bit longer. I suspect that by April, I know that the network, the state network, is allowing us to meet in person or optionally online. And I'm hoping that by May, we'll be able to get back to some sense of normal. It does depend in our region on the numbers here. They tend to be a little bit higher than other parts of the state, and our local venue, of course, is problematic because they have been shutting down at 6 o'clock and we're not able to go till 8 o'clock. So a couple of factors, but for this month, probably March and probably April, we'll continue to meet the way we are right here in Zoom world. For the month of April, the network is sponsoring a state spring conference. I know Tommy has already signed up. I'm about to sign up, but I'm going to turn the floor over for this segment to Charles Fiore, who's estimable colleague, the communications director for the North Carolina Writers Network, the state organization, an author in his own right. Charles, I am going to ask everyone to mute themselves, and I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself so we can give you undivided attention.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Vincent. And thank you to the group for having me tonight. I think this is my first time hanging out with you all. So it's really an honor to be here. You guys are an extremely active group. And I mean, you guys it's really exciting what you all have going on. So it's energizing for me to be with you tonight. I always see your monthly events happening. So I'm glad we can make it work. Yeah, my name is Charles Fiore. I am the communications director for the North Carolina Writers Network. And most of you probably know, but we're a membership organization devoted to writers of all levels of skills and experiences in fiction, creative nonfiction, poetry, and screenwriting. And our website is ncwriters.org. And yeah, so on Saturday, April 23rd, we're going to be hosting our annual spring conference. We're going to be holding an in-person on-site conference on the campus of UNC Greensboro. And we'll also have a separate online program happening at the same time. Some events that are happening in person will be live streamed for the online participants. So whether you register for on-site or online, you get a full day of programming. So a couple of things about that. We haven't actually met in person for a spring conference since 2019. We were all set to do this in 2020, and then everything fell apart a month before the conference. So it's been many years, and we're really excited to get back on UNCG's campus. As far as Vincent mentioned, numbers and health codes and all that stuff. A couple of things about that. We've been very careful to talk in the conditional tense, meaning we are planning to have an in-person spring conference. But if the last 2 years have taught us anything, it's that things can really change on a dime. So as of right this very second, there's an in-person and an online conference, and we expect that to happen. And what our website says is that we will meet or exceed the CDC guidelines. So no matter what's happening at the local level, we'll meet those guidelines or even exceed them from a safety perspective. So what's on the docket? Carol Boston Weatherford, which has been mentioned, she's a North Carolina Literary Hall of Fame inductee. She's going to be giving the keynote address. Her most recent book just won a Newbery, and there'll be master classes in fiction, nonfiction, and poetry. Belle Boggs, who is the director of the MFA in Creative Writing program at NC State, is going to be leading the nonfiction masterclass. And I am extremely excited about having her. We've been wanting to have her teach for us for years. So it feels like a big moment. And then, of course, there are classes in fiction, poetry, nonfiction, the business of books. We'll be having an agent lead a class. And for the first time ever at Spring Conference, we're going to have classes for what we call writers of stage and screen. So there'll be a class on screenwriting 101, and then a class led by Joy Goodwin, which is just about, is this a screenplay? Because I think sometimes we end up, some of us prose writers especially, maybe get into a project and we think to ourselves, is this really working as a block of prose? Maybe it's a screenplay. So she'll actually lead a class about that. And then we have another instructor leading a class about how to have a writing workshop, what makes for a successful writing group. So we're covering kind of a lot of different parts of the writing business, and we're just expecting a good crowd. We're making certain preparations so that we're able to socially distance a little bit in the general sessions. Everyone's going to have plenty of room to spread out. Usually it's, knock on wood, it's a beautiful day in April at UNCG. So we may even have some outdoor stuff too. And yeah, registration is open at ncwriters.org. There's no on-site registration this year, so you have to pre-register, and that registration closes April 18th. So you got some time, but especially if you want to do the master classes, I'd get on it. I'd go ahead and register and apply. And thank you to those who've already registered. Look forward to seeing you. So I'd love to open. Does anybody have any questions about the network or about the conference itself?
I'll just give a comment that the classes are really worth it. I've been there, I think just 1 year, but it's really worth it.
It's a legitimate full day. It's 9 to 6:30. So the day includes open mics. There's faculty readings, and we're once again bringing back the ever popular Slush Pile Live, where a panel of editors sits in front of a room and responds to anonymous submissions read out loud and gives like in the moment feedback. And it's an hour of like just a crash course in what not to do or what to do in your writing. So it can be one of the most educational hours you'll probably have all year. So worth the price of admission.
Yeah, I second what Tommy said. I was actually got several of them, and one of them with Tom, and just the wealth of information that you guys provide in the courses, and it's in a very non-threatening environment. It's like, and for new writers, particularly those who haven't been published formally yet, to learn the craft, to get better at the craft. And what impressed me too, Charles, is that it wasn't just about the writing. It was about the stuff that goes auxiliary to our writing, right? The creation of social media, how do we get the word out? I know several of the people, I met with Bill Cottrell earlier this week, and getting a Facebook page launched and getting a website launched. We have different folks on this call. I'm looking at my screen here that are at different stages of not just their writing and their published works, but at different stages of how they're going to market that. And I wish I knew way back when that it's probably a good idea to get your web focus and get your media out there before you get the book even published. Just start to build that presence. And I learned a lot of craft from the folks at that meeting. I also had a chance to meet Olga Vera. She's an incredible 90-some-year-old lady who wrote a book on the Russian Empire, and from firsthand experience, because she was actually part of a gulag and survived that during World War II, and met her husband, Mr. Vero, Italian aviator who was down during World War II in America, and fascinating story, relevant to today. So I'm hoping she's still alive and with us, and I'm hoping if she's there, I'll get a chance to say, hey, thank you for your encouragement. But and thank you, Charles, for your encouragement.
If I may say, I'm excited about two of the classes I've signed up for. One is on the importance of detail in fiction. And I really look forward to learning, do I need to write too much or too little detail? And the second class is on dialogue. And the first novel that I've written, it's not quite published yet, but it probably went from about 15 to 20% dialogue the first write through, and it's probably up to about 50 or 60% dialogue now.
Yeah,
I found an awful lot of fun writing dialogue because you can really get into a person because you're speaking their own words. So I look forward to both of those classes, detail and fiction, and writing dialogue, learning more. That's it.
That's fantastic. Yeah, absolutely.
So for some of us who live on the northern part of Cabarrus County and those of us who live in Rowan County, it's not too far of a ride. It's about an hour and a half car ride. For those who are a little bit further south, it may be, you know, closer to an hour and a half or so, but it's a nice location, a beautiful campus. And if we get more folks there, maybe we can all, as this region, host like a little regional lunch or something. And because we haven't been able to meet in person for so long, it's just encouraging to hear what you guys are all up to and what you're trying to get done. But Charles, I thank you for your leadership, and Ed Southern and the whole group up there. So thank you.
Well, thank you all for staying with us during the ups and downs of the last couple of years. Flexibility has been key, and thank you, Vincent, for just being so willing to. I mean, you were one of the first ones to jump onto Zoom and say, "All right, this is how it's going to get get done." And so we really appreciate that, and thank you for carrying.
My daughter made me do it, Charles. She said, we're going to keep meeting. We're not going to be able to meet in person, and so we'll just do it on Zoom. And she set it up and taught me what I needed to know. And this has been how we've kind of managed to stay connected. Our newsletter has been helpful, and I think if you go to our newsletter, because those of us who have a website, you'll be able to learn a little bit more about each of the authors. MJ has a website out there. Oh gosh, Bill's working on his website. Tom's got a website. Audrey's got a website. Audrey and Larry Jones have put together a website. So what I'd like to do, with your permission, if you're able to hang with us for a little bit, Charles, is go around the room here, the virtual room, and just, you know, anyone who wants to just volunteer where they are, what they're doing, and the progress they're making with their own particular project. On my screen, I see Audrey up the upper hand, left hand. I don't know, Audrey, if you want to start. I see Audrey and I see MJ right after that. And you have to unmute yourself, though.
Yeah. Hi. Well, we're planning to write our workbook series that we've been talking about for the last 2 years, because Larry, with his coach, you know, Larry became an ADHD coach based on our book. And from there, he has clients are like all over the world now. And MJ is going to start working with one, hopefully in Spain, about someone who also works on writing, teaching people how to write, and with all of her skill and all her great book, working on seminars. So we've been trying to work on activities to promote our mission and our subject. Enabled Tables Media is our website. We're currently working, our workbook series will be around achieving working for success. How do you recognize the opportunities, and how do you build success? And that's what we're working on. We need, and let me put my pitch out here. We need mentors we're working with students who are currently in foster care and students who have aged out of foster care. And so we need mentors. So it's all on our website. Anybody interested, I'd really appreciate to hear from you.
Audrey, is it possible for you to put that link in the chat to your website?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
We can't hear you, Vince.
Yeah.
I was starting to say, thank you, Tommy. There's no rhyme or reason to the gallery view, but MJ, you're next on my gallery frame view here, and I know you've got all kinds of exciting stuff you're doing, and updating your book and your how-to book, and I think you're working with, or have worked with the network to get that published, and referenced. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
So am I on? It's Vince, are you talking to me, MJ?
Yes, MJ, I'm so sorry. Yes, I was talking to you. Talking with,
Okay. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome, Chuck. Welcome to the wonderful meeting that we share once a month with marketing people like Audrey Jones, who needs social media. Thank you, Audrey. I have published 5 novels, and I've got 4 manuscripts on the table. The 6th novel is ready for the professional edit. The other 3, I'm trying to decide whether to put them in one publication or separate them and publish them individually. Such a headache to have. For those of you who write, whether you're published or not, if you think like me, there's nothing as satisfying as writing and completing a novel, and then of course, getting it published. But one of my weaknesses is once I publish a book, I'm ready to move on to the next one. What I could use a lot of assistance on is the marketing piece. And I was kind of glad to hear the comments that you made earlier about social media, because that is my weakness. Okay, social media is just a weakness I have. In fact, my biggest weakness is technology, period. I've been fortunate, however, to associate with a couple of young people who, one of whom has taught me how to use MailerLite and has helped me to produce a newsletter. But I need help still with how I'm using the newsletter. And I had, since my Facebook account got hacked last year, I deactivated that account. And so I've got to nurse my wounds, get over my fears, and reactivate my Facebook account. And I'm told that I should have one that's an author page as opposed to just a regular, like a personal page or account. Other than that, I don't have anything else to report. Thank you.
thank you, MJ, and your newsletter is superb, by the way. And I've seen Audrey's. I see your thumbs up. I mean, you ladies have taken newsletter, writing to the next level. And I look forward to seeing that newsletter and learning what's new in your world. So we're all learning this together. If I recall, many months ago, Jim Nettles taught us how some of the ins and outs about MailerLite and ConvertKit and some alternatives to the all famous MailChimp and all that. And so I think we're each of us learning this. We're all learning this together, right? So, but part of it is content. So anyhow, let's see. Seems MJ. Oh, Barb Baker's leaving something in the chat for you. Okay, I'm sorry. That just popped up on my screen. Tommy, you're the next folk on my screen here. Can you tell us what's going on in your? I know what's going on, but fill in the rest of the group.
You might not know it all, but anyhow,
Yes, my wife tells me that every night. You don't know.
Since our last meeting, I penned about 20,000 words on one sliver of my memoirs.
Wow.
And I looked at when I was in prep school in Philadelphia, 1963 to 65. So I look at what I did in school. I tried to make it into a piece of literature. And also a lot of it, what was going on socially in society in 1963 to 65 that I knew about. Not that I read in the newspapers, but I knew about and that affected me for most of my life. And I take the perspective, I'm writing to the current class of 2025 in 2022. And I'm using a series of 12 letters, one letter written each month over the course of a year. And I'm writing from the perspective of the 100th anniversary of my graduation from high school in 2065. So I'm in 2065, talking to the current day class about what was going on in society in 1963 to 65 and how it affected me. Now, since I'm writing in the future, I talk about future vision, and the whole thrust of, and I want to get this published, by the way, Vince, okay? The whole thrust of it is talking to the current class of kids. They're like 16, 17, 18 years old, that the future is not going to be as it is today. The future is going to be different. And because I'm writing in 2065, in the course of these 12 letters, I throw in some possibilities of what might happen in their future. A la Google's been replaced by it's not even called a search engine, it's called a search mind, named Alpha Centauri, with servers on the moon.
Oh, wow.
And I give the year it happened. New Jersey and Pennsylvania merge. It become the first state to merge. And it begins a movement, and I don't say it like this, but it begins a movement of red and blue states getting together. And by 2055, there's only 17 states left in the United States because of the mergers. And it's all sorts of future vision things like that, that physically are probably possible, but who knows if they're going to happen. So I think it's a neat literary trick of talking about the past to kids in the present from the future, where I can really say anything I want. So anyhow, that's what I'm working on. And it's called While I Was Attending the Prep.
I love it, Tom. I'm visualizing if someone had done something like that in 1865 and tried to project forward into when you and I had graduated from high school. It would have been right in the middle of the Civil War.
I'm really trying to envision technology and politics and society, where it's going to go 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now, in such a way the kids in high school now will think, if they read this, whoa, who knows? It might.
Never know. Exactly. Thanks, Tom, for the update. You and I need to get together this weekend, hopefully, and talk about the manuscript. So
right,
that's a whole different topic. Bill Cottrell, you're next on my screen. I know you and I met, and you're working on your website. Can you get group an update?
Right. Yeah. No, I have some things to report. I guess everyone knows I'm a retired physician, and I've written 2 books. One, Confessions of an Anesthesiologist, and all my personal and professional trials. And then I wrote another one called Greenbrier Chronicles, which had a lot to do with my life and also environmental concerns. And so I am planning on writing another book, but as Vincent said, I feel it's time for me to create a website, and I have sort of viewed that as a nuisance and a problem, because I didn't understand initially why I really need a website. I'm on Facebook, and I think Facebook has been good. Whenever I publish something on Facebook, I see a little blip in my cells, so I know there's something to that. But I've been convinced now, after talking with Vincent, he met with me and gave me some ideas. I see creating a website as a challenge and possibly a fun endeavor. And I'm just have a lot of creative ideas spinning through my head. I haven't actually created it yet, but I've read several tutorials and videos and YouTubes about what you do. At first, I was very confused because there are many options and many stores you can go to, and also many ways, and a lot of technology and words that were used I didn't understand. I was confused. So in my usual obsessive compulsive way, I said, I just need to read a book to understand. So I'm telling you this because it was a mistake. So I ordered building a website for dummies. And I thought I learned better by reading than people telling me. But I'm showing you that because that was a mistake. Don't buy that book. If you want to have mine, it's really based on building the website from the code. In other words, doing it yourself if you're a techie. And for most people like me, you don't do it that way. Also, that book was from 2010. The best way for most people like me is to get a website builder like Wix or Weebly, or there's Square or something. There's at least 10, or there's a whole GoDaddy, a whole bunch of websites that will help you build your own website. You follow a procedure and you have to pay so much money. And I'm getting pretty close to where I'm going to start doing that. What's the creative part of building a website is creating your own domain and finding, and part of that is finding a name. And then you can put your other endeavors under that umbrella. And you need a domain that's particular to what you do, but also one that hasn't been used by anybody else. So that's been a challenge, and I've come up with several ideas, and I don't necessarily want to say what they are, but I think it forces you to analyze what you're doing and come up with something creative. So with Vincent's help, I am on the path to creating a website. I hopefully by next meeting I will have it, and also the website will kind of be the basis for my next book. They'll all sort of be under the same umbrella. And of course, everybody knows there's a lot of possibilities with a website. You can use it as a blogging site. You can connect it to your Amazon account and or do a newsletter or whatever. I haven't fulfilled or just made all those individual decisions, but I see getting a website is kind of a basis, and you can plug in these other added things as you go along. So I'm at least further along in the process than I was a few weeks ago. And I see it as a potential to expand your creativity and to and also to publicize your product. So I'm not there yet, but thanks to Vincent, and I'm getting closer.
Well, you are, Bill, and I think if you look at the websites from all of the people on this call and beyond, the folks that belong to our region, you'll get some pretty good ideas, some good templates. And some folks are using Weebly and others are using Wix. So you name the likely suspects. So maybe one of these sessions when we get together, we can compare notes on what we did to get the websites up and running, how we grew them over time, and so forth. And I don't know if that's something, Charles, if the network offers services like that, that can help us, get around, because I'm a firm believer that you don't need to wait till your book is published before you create a website, that it's actually the other way around sometimes. But can you fill us in, Charles, on what's available from the network?
Sure. We have in the past had classes on how to build a website. I believe there are some videos of online classes. So if you're a member of the network, you can access our video archive. Go back to like 2016, 2017, and there might be some stuff on there. We don't have a service right now that would help someone build a website specifically. We can all we can do is kind of offer guidance through some classes and stuff like that. So, but this has been really helpful. May I ask how many people are in the process of building their website or don't have one already? Can you raise your hand if you? Yeah.
If they don't have a website, right? So Ruthie does not have one yet. Andrea,
I do not have one.
Yeah.
No.
Thank you for pointing out this need. So,
I don't have one.
yeah, there's some of the people that actually have websites are not on this call. So the folks that are on this call, I'd say 50-50, something like that. But I know I should go the other way around. MJ has one, Tommy has one. I'm looking at my screen here. Yep, and Audrey has one. Tatisha has one. Tatisha's not feeling well tonight. She's not going to talk because I talked with her earlier and she can barely speak. I'm sorry, Tatisha, you're dealing with whatever is bothering your larynx and all of that, but we know you're listening. But I think you've done a pretty good job with your website. So yeah, Charles, we'll keep you in the loop on that and come back to you for some advice. I'm looking at my screen and I see Andrea is the next person here up. Andrea I call her Andy Engler. Wrote several books, highly successful, bestseller list, and new to our group in the last couple of months. So, Andy, just can you fill us in on what you've done and where you plan to go in your future writing?
Well, it's been maybe 7 years since I've done anything. I have really, I would say 3.5 books. 3 books were a revised edition, but you have to put quite a bit of percentage in of new material. So I count 2 of them as one book, the second and third. The first and second were very different because of technology. The first book I wrote, had pagers in it. And after that, there were cell phones and other things. But my writing mostly, in fact, all of it was nonfiction for single mothers. I had a best-selling, it was on the New York Times list of a book for single mothers. I've written quite a few essays and have been published in those, but again, about being raised by a single mother. I wrote, most of my writing though was through, I had newspaper columns. I had a syndicated column for single parents. And I also I wrote for several magazines, Working Mother, Red Book, some New Woman, well-known magazines wrote columns or short articles. And now that single moms, in my opinion, are a normal, accepted way of life, which they should have been back then. Plus, I don't have Dan Quayle or any, back then he was my biggest promoter, because he would accuse single mothers of being the problems in this country. So I got lots of free publicity because of him. But today, I guess I'm really involved in politics right now. And I want to write about, I grew up in the 60s too. I want to write something for young people, even though I'm quite a bit older than young people. But when I was 17, 18, 19, I was really active doing stuff, in the 60s. We fought against so many things. And today there's something happening again, that looks really ugly to me. And I feel, hey, we got to pass the baton to some younger people. How do I write about that? I'm just learning. Twitter is teaching me a lot. I'm learning these, AFK. I thought I was real hip because I knew AFK was away from keyboard. Nobody uses that anymore. So I'm trying to keep up with the language, but also appeal to younger people, because I really I love these. I like David Hogg in Florida, from the school shooting, who's trying to help with gun control issues. And these are 19, 20, 21-year-olds. And I really enjoy talking to them. And, they tell me, wow, we like talking to you too. You got some cool stories, but I just not sure how to get in there, and sometimes you have to, as Khalil Gibran said in The Prophet, something about, your children and not your children, they come through you, but not from you. And I can't really go back or get in there. I have to know when to leave it alone, but I also have to understand why, when my son was younger, when he was living here, why my house was always filled with teenagers. And even when he was older, he didn't leave for a long time. 20 and early 30-year-olds would hang out here. So, and even if he wasn't here, they'd come by and visit. So that gave me a feeling I can connect. I can still connect with these people. I just need to know the boundaries and make sure, because a part of me wants to take some of them and just knock their heads against the wall and going, What do you mean you don't care? You don't care about this or about that? You know, I'm going to be gone and you're going to be living on an earth that's burning. You're going to have to do something. You're inheriting this planet. Then they listen a little bit. I also tend to scare people, young women that go, oh, I don't vote. I don't know what's going on. And do you know women were raped and killed to get the right to vote? And they are all like, oh my God, no, I didn't. And I scare them a little. And then I try to be nice again once they don't run away from me. But that's something that means a lot to me. I want to get in the heads of some of these people and leave some of them something to say, well, this lady taught me about this and that. And I think I'm gonna continue it. It's important. You know, she's dead. She doesn't care, but we're here. And I want to write something for young people. I think not a young adult book, nothing like that. Just, you know, that my friends would read, anyone would read, but someone in their early 20s would say, hey, this is pretty cool. That's it. And I'm stuck. But
part of the reason we meet is to get unstuck, Andy. So, you know, that's the whole purpose of this group. I want to welcome Landis Wade to our meeting. He just joined us. Landis is our guest tonight, and he is running a successful podcast in our neighboring county of Mecklenburg County in Charlotte. And I'm going to go back to the roundtable, to the open mic in a little bit, but I'm trying to honor Landis's time too, because I know he can't stay with us for the whole meeting. So Landis, you have, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself. I put some information in our newsletter and on our Facebook page. And I know you've worked with Charles Fiore and with Ed Southern and other folks in the network, but the folks on this call, some of them are published authors who are quite successful. Others are aspiring authors, current writing, and every way along the way. And one of the things we talked about before you joined the call is how do we get the word out about our writing before we publish and after we've published, and what are some of the mechanisms? I know you're a highly successful podcaster, and we haven't talked about podcasts at all on these sessions. So if you could just educate us a little bit about it. I know Andrew is cool with that, but some of the others of us are new to it. So I'll zip up.
Vincent, before we get started, can people please just mute?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
hearing background noises and everything else.
Thank you for that. Thank
Okay.
you, Bob. Landis, we'll turn it over to you.
All right, well, Vincent, thanks for having me tonight. I really appreciate it. And hello, Charles, good to see you again. And hello to everybody else in the neighboring county. Yeah, I just had one of those scary moments. I did a Facebook Live event with two authors, and when I got through after an hour and 10 minutes, I couldn't find that it was on the Charlotte Readers Podcast Facebook page. I'm like, what happened? It was saying streaming live the whole time. Turns out it went to my personal Landis Wade Facebook page. So at least it's there. But I had about 10 minutes of panic. I just wasted these authors' time. But anybody who showed up at Charlotte's podcast at 5:30 today expecting that, they didn't get it. But they'll get it. I'll figure out how to get it to them. Anyway, sorry for that segue, but y'all have had those moments, right? Did I hit record or didn't I hit record? You know. So anyway, I had one of those moments tonight. I am what you would call a recovering trial lawyer. I did that for 35 years. I was a civil trial lawyer here in Charlotte, mostly employment cases, commercial cases, that kind of thing. And then it got to be some really big cases later in my career. And then in my 50s, I kind of dabbled with writing a little bit, wrote a couple of novellas. The first one I gave to my family as a Christmas gift. They thought I'd given them socks or something for Christmas. And then but I liked it so much, I did it again, and I wrote a trilogy. And when I got to be 61, I thought, I got to do something else with my life besides try to win another big case or lose another big case for a big bank, you know. So I thought, I'm going to do something creative. I've already been invested in organizations like this. You know, I knew that I needed to join and connect up. So I did that in my mid-50s when I was writing. And I just thought, I need to go do something that I know nothing about. What do I know nothing about? Oh, podcasting. I know nothing about podcasts. So I'll just go do that. And so I decided I would go. I found somebody who knew how to do it and took them in the studio with me. And she showed me what buttons to push, and I started podcasting. And my first guest was a member of my critique group. Really started small, and they were happy to be there. But now I've had over 300 authors on the show. I'm approaching the 300th episode in June. I've had everything from debut authors to New York Times bestsellers. It's been it's really turned out to be something, and I know you are talking about, getting the word out about your writing, and maybe I'll weave that into this discussion here, because I wanted to learn more about the craft of writing, and I sort of boil that down into a couple of areas now. One is get involved in organizations like this, the North Carolina Writers Network. I'm also a member of the Charlotte Writers Club, and I'm also a member of Charlotte Center for Literary Arts, and go to their events. And thank goodness COVID will be over at some time, and we can go to more of those events, right, Charles? We're going to do that, right? And so we want to do that, and you want to engage with other writers and do what you're doing here, engage with each other and learn from each other. And I thought, what is the most inexpensive? I was wrong about that, because there was some expense in podcasting too. The inexpensive way to learn about the craft of writing, I know, I'll talk to other writers. They've done it before. They'll know things that I don't know. And so, since I love to read anyway, I thought I'll read books. I'll start a podcast where authors give voice to the written words. I'll ask them about their books. I'll have them read a little bit, and then I'll ask them some writing life questions. And through that, and then I had this idea, well, I'll start a Patreon channel too, where people can join that channel now for like $5 a month. And I've now got 120 exclusive episodes on there, conversations with people like Ron Rash and Clyde Edgerton and Charles and others about, and we would go deeper dive there. I'd pick their brains about a topic related. I think, Charles, you and I talked about independent presses when we did that. And so that was another way to educate me. And I thought, what a great way to learn more about writing. I thought that if I could put a book out a year as a lawyer while I'm practicing law, surely it would be easy to put a lot of books out in the last 3 years while I'm podcasting. I was totally wrong about that. And I'm totally glad that I was, because by doing what I did, it gave me time not only to figure out what I wanted to write about for my next novel, which is coming out in a month, but also to learn more about the craft of writing. And I was a very impatient person, type A personality, want to win the big case, want to go to court, wow the jury and everything. So I was kind of an impatient person. I wanted to put out my next book. But sometimes you kind of need to let it marinate a little bit, because my personal story about this book that's coming out now is that I was kind of writing a mystery. It was set in a retirement home. Those things didn't change much. But the underlying plot, what I was writing about, I wasn't too excited about it. And you know what? That thing I did called podcasting, that thing where, I was kind of the brunt of the joke. Did you hear the one about the lawyer who walked into a podcast studio? That was me. And also, I'll segue here a minute. My dad asked me when I first started podcasting, he said, "Now, Landis, how do you make money doing this?" And I'm like, "Dad, I don't, at least not for a while." And he just shook his head. Didn't I teach you anything? And you're now 60 years old. And anyway, so back to my story about the novel. Things happen serendipitously sometimes. And when you're off doing something else, supporting other people doing this thing, and when I say that, I was helping other authors promote their work, but I'm also getting something beneficial to myself. I interviewed this author who'd written a nonfiction book about the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence. And I was fascinated by it. There are all these conspiracies. John Adams is accusing Thomas Jefferson of plagiarism. Jefferson's writing back to Adams. They had this personal feud anyway, after they kind of broke up after Jefferson beat Adams in that next election. So I thought, this is real. I said, "Are you going to write that novel?" And he said, No, why don't you write it? And I said, "Well, if I do, will you kind of look over it, make sure I don't screw the history up?" He said, "Yeah, I'll be glad to." And that's what happened. And then I got really energized. So for a while there, I was struggling. And the North Carolina Writers Network, y'all know, this month is a great addition that came about at writing routines. And one thing I learned is, and it's kind of an oxymoron a little bit, because when I read all the different ways people do it, you kind of turn the word routine upside down, because you think of routine as one thing after another, a certain time, certain day, but all these writers are doing things different ways, right? And that's a great way to think about writing routines, is that there's no one routine that works. And for me, that routine was sort of write 3 books and think about the next one for about a couple of years while I'm doing a podcast. That's not a very productive way to write a book. But when I really got energized, I mean, I think in about 6 weeks, I wrote 80 or 90,000 words. Now, so you could say, hey, you should get up every day. You should have 500 words on the page. That's great. That might work for you. It doesn't work for me. For me, I've got to really cogitate about it a little while and get passionate about what and once I get passionate about it, and if I can find a way to sneak away to my cabin in the mountains, then I can really put some lousy words on paper, right? And get those things down to where, I mean, I got 120,000 words down, and then I was like, this is really cool. And then I go back and we start paring it down and everything. I'm sorry to digress, but the point I was trying to make is that by doing this thing I knew nothing about how to do, which was podcasting, it kind of opened up a level of creativity that I hadn't had before, and kind of allowed me to find a project that I was much more passionate about than just writing, another mystery, another legal thriller kind of thing. So on the podcast front, for years, last 3 years, I've been, during COVID, I kind of went inside. I was doing it in a studio in Charlotte, and I was doing 1 a week. When COVID hit, I thought, oh, well, I'm going to be home anyway. I'll do 2 a week. I started doing 2 a week, and plus the Patreon episodes, and it was a lot, but I had the time to do it because I wasn't going anywhere. But now that we were sort of coming out of it, I had to make a decision in January, only 1 a week. And then now with all the book stuff and everything, and trying to figure out, am I going to be able to write another book while I'm podcasting? I've got to think about what I do after the 300th episode, which is think smarter, do different things. But everything's a growing stage with the podcasting. If you're not doing something different, you're not growing. I guess that's true with anything, probably. But anyway, I will continue to do it because I'll do these kind of live things tonight if I figure out what dang button to push. I pushed the wrong button tonight. But if I figure those things out, then yeah, I'll continue the podcast and kind of, because it's really helped me in my writing process. Now, having said that, you can take that and you can do it in almost anything. Maybe you want to write a blog. Maybe you want to write a newsletter. Maybe you want to collaborate with somebody else. Find that something that energizes you that's not just about the writing. This is just a thought, a process that will open you up to some other things for you to write about, or other people that will introduce you to ideas that you will write about. Because if we just cocoon ourselves, in our writing space and don't come out like the turtle who doesn't peek his head out from under their shell, then we're going to miss what's going on in the world around us. We're going to miss other opportunities. I've just found that taking on this creative venture has opened up the writing world to me more than it ever was before. And I've met these New York Times bestselling authors. I interviewed Lisa Jewell in London. She's the bestselling fiction author in London. Had a wonderful conversation with her. And I think, I'll just tell y'all now, I think CJ Box has agreed to be my 300th author, and he writes these. I love the Western Wyoming sheriff kind of things, and he does that. So we'll have him. But and I've done all kind of genres. I don't do as much poetry anymore because, frankly, I don't understand it as well as I understand prose. And got in trouble one time when somebody told me I was asking bad questions. I said, "What do you mean I'm asking bad questions?" I said, "Well, you asked that poet what they meant by what they wrote." I said, "Well, I didn't know what the hell they meant. What am I supposed to do?" And so, anyway.
Landis, I have to interrupt you. You see, one of our team members here, Barbara's just putting her head back as a poet.
Yeah.
And I was just getting inside of her head when you were saying that.
Look, I have nothing against poets. It's just that I'm not a poet, and I don't, so I've got to be able to interview people effectively. And I don't think that I did as good a job interviewing the poets as I do interviewing the.
There's a lot of different kinds of poetry, Landis.
Oh yeah, I know that.
My stuff makes sense. I don't understand the air and the loopy ones that are all
Yeah.
flighty, cloudy, who knows what, and you're supposed to interpret it. I don't write like
We're
that.
good. We're in the same ballpark then.
Okay,
but-
so just shared that. I'm done.
No, that's great. I love that. I have read some poetry that I do understand. And
Landis, before
yeah.
before you go forward, I want to also take, Charles needs to leave us here in just
Oh,
a
sure,
few minutes. And I
absolutely.
just want to give him an opportunity if there was any closing comments that he had before he leaves the meeting. Charles?
Oh, no, I hate to leave you. I'm so sorry. I have a family obligation.
Sure.
But it was an absolute joy to be here tonight. Landis, I couldn't agree more. I think finding another project to get obsessed with while you're writing simmers can really be a really productive. Good. So keep listening to Landis. He knows what he's talking about. And I did catch your Facebook Live event, Landis. It came up right on my homepage. So it was out there. It was out there.
Okay, it's just on the wrong page. That's all right.
It's the wrong,
We'll figure it out.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you
Charles.
all very much. Everyone have a wonderful night. So
Thank you, Charles. We look forward to seeing you in April.
Absolutely. Thank you.
In person.
In
Yeah.
person.
Thank you. Landis, go ahead. I'm still
Yeah, well,
very much intrigued by what
No, I was
you're
just-
looking for.
And I'll open up to questions the same, because I'll just kind of stream the consciousness there. My background took me into, I think took me into this because I'd spent so much of my career interviewing people, right? Interviewing witnesses. And I figured, well, I know how to talk, I know how to ask questions. I also know how to get out of the way, because when you're in court and you're doing a direct examination, the jury doesn't care about the lawyer. You know what they care about? They care about the witness. Same thing's true on a podcast. They don't care about me, the host. They care about the guest and what they're going to say. So what I've tried to do is transpose what I learned as a lawyer to podcasting, to be able to ask questions that feature the author and what they have to say. And y'all all have talents too that you bring from your work lives that you could also take and do something else creative. It might also be kind of a second thing or a third thing for you to do to complement your writing. Because as you know, another thing I've learned is, there's the surface plot, there are the characters, but underneath every novel, there's always a theme or two themes or three themes. And those are the cool things that you can pull out of your novel. I think Stephen King says he doesn't write his novels with a theme in mind. He writes his novels and then looks back to see which themes actually make their way to the surface. And then when you find out what those are, it might be like in my book that's coming out, it's Deadly Declarations. It's about a mystery that relates back to the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence. There's a death in a retirement home, but the themes are more about coming to terms with aging, transition from your act 2 to your act 3, losing your job at age 65 and finding yourself in a retirement community and not knowing what to do with your life. Those are some of the underlying, and friendship and what actually goes on in retirement. Those are underlying things. That's not the plot of the book. That's not, why did he die? Why did he leave all his money to the most despised resident at the Indy? What does this have to do with the mystery 250 years old? But those themes are the things that you can use to market your books. You're talking about, getting the word out. Well, everybody, there's thousands of legal thrillers, there's thousands of mysteries, but how many of them have to do with this particular thing or that particular thing or that particular issue? Or maybe there's a domestic violence issue you're passionate about and you want to talk about that has nothing to do with your fiction book or your whatever. That's where you can get some people to invite you to speak about that topic. And oh, by the way, this person is the author of X book. You might want to check it out. I don't know, it's just another way to think about, marketing your books and talking about your books and getting out there, other than just say, please buy my book. I wrote this great legal thriller or mystery or a literary fiction piece or whatever. No, I've become an expert in this one little thing because I did write this book, and I'd be glad to come talk to your civic group or whatever about that one thing and provide you with some value there. It's kind of what I do with the podcast tonight. On the podcast, that thing where I pushed the wrong button and sent them to my personal Facebook page instead of to the Charlotte Readers Podcast Facebook page. Well, I invited two authors who'd been on the show before who wrote books about their struggles. And we took that and we turned it into, and after they had a chance to talk a little bit about their books, overcoming struggles in writing and marketing. We had about an hour and 10-minute conversation about that. And these were authors who'd already been on the show. We came back, and it was kind of a service to other people, because the more you hear people talk about their struggles and the more suggestions you hear, maybe you're not going to do that exactly, but you'll take that idea and you'll go do something else. So how many of us struggle with how to market our work? We all do, right? How many of us struggle with y'all are talking about that tonight? Well, we threw out examples tonight of things that we've done. And the thing that that we came away with this, or at least I came away with, was that in order to get beyond this problem of how to market your book, you've got to find things about marketing that are fun. Who hadn't sat there and said, well, I'm a writer, I don't really want to have to worry about marketing my books? Well, I have to break it to you. You know this, those of you who've written books and you're trying to sell them, you're now in business, whether you like it or not. And what comes with business? It's selling something, right? And what you're selling is what you've written. And if you think it was good enough to spend all that time with your butt in the chair and all that angst, editing it, and all that stuff to get it done, it's worth the time to go out there and market it. But you just got to find the thing that's fun to do. And I'll give you one little thing that I did recently that was fun to do. We produced an audiobook in connection with my book that's coming out. It's going to come out at the same time as a print book. I contacted my narrator and I said, hey, got an idea. I got this podcast. I'd like to do an episode where I interview 3 of the characters from my book. And he said, yeah, that'd be fun. So I wrote a script and I called 3 characters and he played the characters. And he's an actor in LA. So he tweaked my script a little bit. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, I called up the characters. One of them hadn't read, but about a fourth of the way through it, he wanted to know what was going to happen. He also wanted to know why I made him do certain things. He also wanted me to take certain parts of the book out that he didn't like. And then I dialed the antagonist by accident. He had some choice words for me by the way I portrayed him in the book. And so it was really a lot of fun, that he called me a has-been lawyer who wants to be an author kind of thing, so we had a good time, just tongue in cheek kind of stuff. That was fun. It's also fun to do videos. I would say that part of being a creator, and y'all are all creators because you're writers, is learning new things. Well, you can get a Canva, CANVA, if you're not using it, for about $120 a year. You can become a graphic designer. It's pretty easy to use. You can use it for all your social media. If you want to make audiograms, little clips of you doing audio, you can join Headliner, about the same amount a year. You can use that and create this thing. If you want to, you can get some editing software. If you want to make videos. I interviewed an author recently. I thought he had a great marketing idea, and I'm going to do it for Deadly Decorations because I've got a lot of scenes in Charlotte. He wrote a historical fantasy novel, and he took his video camera and a lavalier mic he bought on Amazon, which connects to his iPhone, and he went out to 10 locations, settings in his book, and talked about the historical significance of these locations to his novel. And he put those 10 episodes up on his website and on a YouTube channel, and he had fun doing it. And people had fun watching it. And they were only 3 or 4 minute videos each. And it was just an effective way to kind of get a little bit more out there about your work other than just, hey, here's my Amazon page. So these are not ideas necessarily you'll take and say, I'm going to go do that. But that might spark some other idea in your head that you say, oh, well, I could do this. Or maybe I could get someone to do an interview with me where, about my whatever, and we do it together. The other thing I say is, another way to get the word out about your work is do it with other people. That is, if you've got a book coming out and other authors that have books coming out, do joint events, double the fun, double the audience. You bring your friends, they bring their friends. Hey, now you know about another author. They bring their audience. So I'm going to be doing a lot of events when my book comes out in April and May with authors who have appeared on the podcast, some of whom have books coming out. Some of whom have been kind enough to just say, Landis, you interviewed me. I'll go to the bookstore and I'll interview you in front of, these folks. And so that's another way. And you might also create your own panels. Maybe some of y'all have some things you write in common. You would go do something together on YouTube. Have a panel discussion. Maybe you would have an event together where you focus on something in particular. Maybe we're going to have an event called, my poetry is something that you can understand without having to go to school, or something like that. Or we're going to read some poems, and I promise when you leave, you will have understood exactly what they were about. Just having some fun with it. Or you go to I was going to do beer and a podcast one time where I invited people to come listen to a podcast live and have a beer while they did it. You could have beer and a book event, and have people to come. I would come, if you're offering beer and a book, to do that. So it's all kind of, I think, getting the word out a lot of times is really about finding something that you enjoy doing, that it doesn't feel like work. Because a lot of times I think we say, this feels way too much like work. I don't like this. This is not writing. I need to be writing. I'd rather be writing. And now I've talked too long, so I'm going to answer questions. So thank you.
Landis, one of the things that we benefit when we have these kind of meetings is we always get energized because we have an infusion of new ideas. And I've been on book signings with MJ. We did a book signing up in Salisbury, right at the bookstore. Pre-COVID, I've done book signings with Tommy Doonan in Concord, and we're going to get out of this. It's going to happen April, May, June, somewhere along the way. Enough people will be vaccinated that it will be safe. And I'm looking forward to the time where we can get together like that. And I like your idea of having several of us come together, maybe around a theme, and we could do that. We did something like that last year or 2 years ago, I forget now, at a local museum. We had the history in our works for those of us who do historical fiction or some kind of historical basis. And so the museum hosted it, and we had some fun with that. And I agree with you; it has to be fun, right? But we have, on this very screen, I'm looking at folks who not only are writers, but they have a mission behind each one of their stories. So Tatisha, who has written a book about her husband who was incarcerated, and what it's like to be the spouse of an incarcerated man, and beyond that. Bill Cottrell, who's written about in Confessions of an Anesthesiologist, not just about his profession, but about some personal issues in his family that he had to deal with. All of us, Tommy Doonan in his writing, Barb in her poetry, Jeannie, the Junkyard Dog. I can't wait to see that book coming to life. And Andrea, your time with, as a single mom and everything that you've written about there. And James Polk, when Mr. Polk by the way, James, I think tomorrow, if I get down in that way, I'm going to go visit your ancestor and the birthplace of James Polk down in Mecklenburg County. Christina, who's bringing to life a story from the Balkans that is probably pretty relevant now, that what's going on in Ukraine next door. So, and goodness, Doris, we're going to get some poetry out of her. She's working on it. I know you are. All of you, I can't say enough. Ruthie Wright Roberts, this is the first time that you've been on the call, and can you share a little bit about where you're wanting to go as a writer?
Well, I've never been published. My name's Ruthie. I live in Midland in Cabarrus County. Been here all my life. I've never been published except on Facebook and things like that. I know Vince and Andrea through another group we're participating in. And Vince asked, I probably insulted him. Vince asked me to interview me about my life and my story. And he wrote this nice story and sent it to me to proofread, I guess. And I basically rewrote the whole thing and sent it back to him. So, I have a million stories in my head and I think they're good. There's one called The Very Old School Bus. There's all different ones. There's one about my father when he passed away. I call it The Greeters. I need to send you that, Vince. You've never read that. It was the true story of what happened when he died, that kind of thing. So I find it very interesting. And mother was an English teacher, and her mother was an English Nazi. She taught something called elocution in her home. I didn't even know what that was. Does anybody on here know what elocution is? Because I didn't. It's the exact proper pronunciation of the English language. And my grandmother, if we said the word pretty, she's a pretty girl. Oh, no, sir, that was bad news. You had to say pretty. So that's the kind of person, that's where I come from. And all my sisters are like that. So I don't really have any plans to go anywhere with it, like Vince says, but I appreciate him including me on this. And what one of y'all said earlier about maybe Vince said it, that this is the format to get you out of stuck. Because I find that when I have sat down to write, it's extremely interesting and fun. I have to get my thoughts all arranged, but it's so time consuming. And that's where I have a problem. Things like that eat up your time. I live on a large family farm, 103-year-old family farm in Midland. And there's a lot to do. I'm not out there milking cows, believe you me, but it's a lot to do. And we're right now doing a fabulous thing where there's a 150-year-old log cabin that sits over here in the dead center of this 200-acre farm. And we're in the process of disassembling it and reassembling it right down here below my house on the pond. And that we worked on that today. And I'm trying to document it what I can. It's fabulous. It's so much fun to watch. And I'm in a large family of law enforcement. And my father-in-law was a sheriff. My brother-in-laws are all retired law enforcement. My husband's retired law enforcement. So it's very much a law enforcement military family. So anyway, I kind of got off on a tangent there. So
Well, Ruth,
I appreciate Vince inviting me.
Ruthie, I'm invited because you have a million stories to share, and if we can get some of them published, even locally, if we can get them published here in like the Senior Savvy, I think that you'll have an immediate audience, and you and I can sit down and talk about some of the stories. I love the one story you recounted where was it your dad who was on the Yorktown when it was sunk in Midway?
My father-in-law, Sheriff Roberts, was on the Yorktown when it sank at the Battle of Midway, and he wrote it out for me. Well, he wrote it up for all of us in pencil about 15 years ago. He's deceased now, but it was an incredible story. And what was really incredible was what happened after that. And he wrote it all in just disjointed lines. He murdered the King's English, but I would love to write that story. That's an incredible story. And what happened after that, the ship that sank after that. And he floated in the ocean for hours and was rescued. And that's a fascinating story too. My father was also in the Pacific Theater in World War II, but my father-in-law was when it was on the Yorktown when it sank at the Battle of Midway. So that's an incredible story. Vince, you asked me, I put a poem on Facebook about 3 years ago called "There's a Spider on the Glider." Remember that? A poem, and you asked me if you could print it in your little in this y'all's newsletter. Do you remember that at all? And I wondered if you ever did.
No, I didn't publish it in this one. I'm thinking of publishing it in the Senior Savvy.
Okay.
We need to talk more about how we can build around that. The folks on this
All right.
call who've been in Senior Savvy know what I'm talking about.
I
Thank you, Ruthie. Mr. Polk, anything new coming on in your writing world? I know you've been published several times in Savvy. And
nothing new. I'm entering a writing contest in the senior games down there at the senior center, but I haven't written a story yet.
okay.
I don't know what it's going to be yet, but I entered.
Yeah, I think there's a deadline for those of you who live in Cabarrus County. The Senior Parks and Living Recreation has the senior, is it called, it's not Senior Games, there's some other title, but you can actually enter a competition, whether it's short stories or poetry, any number of genres. So we'll try to get more information out to you about that. Christina, if you can unmute yourself, tell us what you're doing. How far is your story coming? Are you getting some inspiration from what's happening next door in Ukraine?
It has nothing to do with that. I try not to be political or anything. I mean, I just wish, everything goes well. And basically keeping like once a week with my aunt in Romania. And I was trying to reach out to her today and find out more information. And, the WhatsApp today, I guess the connection, she's 85 years old, God bless her. So hopefully I get a chance to talk to her this weekend, see what's going on, but it's devastating. And I just hope and I pray for them, for their safety. It doesn't look pretty.
Yeah, I would think Romania is going to probably end up with some of the refugees from that theater. So yeah, we'll all have to keep an eye on it. You know, I've shared with several of the folks on this call, I believe in a Venn diagram in life. Landis is here because I had a chance to meet with someone who's running for school board here in Cabarrus County. And Andrea and Ruthie will know who I'm talking about, right? Some of you have been active in the local political scene, but yeah, all of our stories intersect at some level. So the story that you're writing, Christina, about your family and what happened in Romania and the transition to the United States is now going to be impacted by what's going on, the new resurgence of the old Soviet Union, I guess, for lack of a better term. But who did I miss? I know Tatisha can't talk tonight because of issues. Jeannie, did you want to share anything about the drug?
First of all, I want to tell Landis, Landis, I'm with you. I love those CJ Box novels. They are great.
Yeah, yeah, they are.
I missed that. What was that, James?
CJ Box novels, Joe Pickett. Those are great books.
Yeah.
I've read every one of them.
Yeah, okay.
And Vincent,
Yes, MJ?
I had a comment and a couple of questions for Landis, but you when he stopped talking, you went past him so quick, I didn't get a chance to comment or to ask him a question. So I'm grateful for this break. When you were talking earlier, Landis, you mentioned a couple of organizations in the Charlotte area, and I think you mentioned the Charlotte Center for Literary Arts, and you mentioned something else.
I mentioned the Charlotte Writers Club, and yes, Charlotte Center for Literary Arts and the Charlotte Writers Club. Charlotte Writers Club is coming up on their 100th year, I guess, this year, and they've had to meet, you know, offline for about a year now too. But we meet once a month from like September to May. We have a speaker at every meeting, and you know, connect with each other. And you don't have to be from Charlotte, to be a member, you know, and it costs a whopping like $35 a year to join. So, you know, don't let that scare you off, you know. And the other one, the Charlotte Center for Literary Arts, is a membership opportunity too, but they offer classes, ways to connect and that kind of thing.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you. Also, thank you for your suggestions for marketing. Can some of these be done virtually, or should they be done in person, videotape them and then put them online? Or, for example, the example you gave about a beer and a book event, I like that.
Yeah.
Would it work best if we were in person? If there were like 4 or 5 authors in person talking about their work, and if not drinking beer, showing a bottle of beer.
Yeah, I would say just be creative, because with COVID, sometimes you're limited, of course. And when I had some advanced readers for my current novel, and I did a little special preview Zoom meeting with them. I told them to bring something to drink. And basically I gave them a chance to ask me some things before anybody else would be able to ask me those questions. So we had a little cocktail hour. We talked about the book and that kind of thing. So that's one way to do it. But if you can be in spaces with each other, breweries are great locations. A lot of them have outdoor spaces that you can get together and hang out. In fact, we're going to have my book launch for my novel at Old Mecklenburg Brewery, because there's some history that's tied in there with my novel. So I thought that'd be kind of fun. They have an outdoor space and they've got an outdoor pavilion. So I'll use that, and it'll be kind of a fun, but you know, you're having a book event and you're having beer there. I mean, you get more people there, right? So, you know, it's a good, so I like both ideas. It's just that you have to bring your own beer if you do it virtually, you know.
So essentially, though, you're saying just get a little creative in how it's done.
Exactly. Be creative with, you know, anything that you're doing marketing, because then it's going to be more fun for you. Ask other people, try certain things. There's this thing, there's a group of indie authors that created this thing called Continual, the con that never ends. It's well done. You can find them on Facebook. They have these, it's a large group that's kind of gotten together, and they do these panels, and they do discussions, and they'll talk about their books. It's just another way to try to connect with people in the reading community to find out about, you know, what's going on. Mostly they're fantasy authors, but they do their own thing. So you could try to, if you write a certain kind of thing, find some other people that write a certain kind of thing too, that might want to pair up with you to do some events together. And then you promote it that way. We're going to start something. I'm all about trying new things. So we're going to do something in Charlotte because I wanted to get out from behind the mic. I'm going to collaborate with a professor from UNC Charlotte and the co-working space that I go work in sometimes since I left the big tower downtown as a lawyer. And we're going to call it Charlotte Readers Book Club. And every quarter, we're going to invite 2 authors who have something similar in a genre. And we're going to have a book club. And the mantra of the club is, you don't have to read the book to show up. And we're going to have drinks there, and it's going to be kind of an informal thing. And who doesn't love a book club where you don't have to be prepared, So that's the idea. You might come up with something like that, and just, start again. There's this thing that is in the North Carolina Writers Network that Alice Osborne, if y'all have heard of her, started, called Wonderland Book Club, and she connected it to a local independent bookstore. Do y'all have an independent bookstore in your area that you support? Has anyone yet started a book club in connection with that bookstore? Do y'all have that? If you don't, y'all could be the first ones to start it. You provide the content, you provide the people that are going to interview the authors, and you get authors from your community and other communities who are going to come into that bookstore to sell their books, and you offer them a space where readers can come in. And by the way, as you, the host or whatever, people are going to find out about you in the process, right? It's just now this is part of my, 90-10 rule. Some people got the 80-20 rule, whether it be social media or anything else you do on publicity. For every 10 times you're talking about something on social media or whatever, 9 times ought to be about something worthwhile about other things or other people, and 10% ought to be about you.
Okay.
Too often you see that people load up their Instagram pages or their Facebook pages with nothing but buy my book, or do, here's what I wrote today, or yada, yada, yada. I'm gonna have to tell you, people don't like that. You'd get tired of it, right? How many times would you go back to that page if all they're doing is spewing out, their own accolades? That's why, on my podcast, you'll see all these other authors, and every now and then I'll throw in an episode about me, right? Or I'll have an author interview me, like I did for my book. I had one of my authors come on and interview me about my book. Well, that's an infinitesimal, small, but they find out about me because I'm the host. Well, be a host of something, go do something for somebody else. And when you do, they're going to find out about you. And as I said, use your newsletter. Maybe you enjoy reviewing books. All these bookstagrammers out there, they're making names for themselves. Some of them are not authors. They just love reading books and talking about it. They're influencers. But some of them are authors who like to actually feature, and they do it on blogs. They do it on Bookstagram. They do it everywhere else. Maybe I heard anesthesiologist. Well, I've got actually next Tuesday, I interviewed a woman from Florida, Tammy Giuliano. She wrote a book called Fatal Intent. She is an anesthesiologist, and this is her second novel. It is fantastic because you get into the mind of this protagonist character who is an anesthesiologist, and everyone is dying around her that she's taking care of, and she can't figure out why. And it's just a great suspense thriller. But the cool thing is she brings her knowledge base to this fiction work and brings it to life. That whole write what you know thing, people criticize that. I don't. I think it enriches the work to write a little bit about what you know. But anyway, you might check that out, Bill, because that comes out on March 1st, her episode, and you might like following her because she's a really good writer. And she said she didn't think she could be a fiction writer because she'd written all these, works to support her, the practice for so many years, and she was doing that. But anyway, now she's found this. I don't know how I got on this tangent, but it was all about creativity and figuring out something fun to do. Find something fun to do, team up with other people, start a book club, do a blog, do a newsletter, support other people. Then guess what? They're going to support you. I've been really gratified that the people who became advanced readers, and I got people to blurb my book that never would have blurred my book had I not interviewed. And when I say that, never would have even read the book because they wouldn't have known me if I was just contacting them. Some people, like Clyde Edgerton. I mean, he's in the Literary Hall of Fame. Well, I interviewed him on the podcast. He had a good time on the show. I asked him to read my book, and if he liked it, would he leave a review? He said, sure, I'll be glad to do that. Well, the writing community is naturally, a community for a reason, because we want to help and support each other. I mean, we all lift each other up, and that kind of thing. We can be jealous of each other from time to time. It's okay. But the fact of the matter is, we all want to help each other out, right? And get people to their, that's why I enjoy coming on here tonight to talk about this, because I'll learn something from y'all. Maybe I'll say something, give you an idea. And I'll learn when I go to these conferences with the Writers Network. And, and after this, I'm going to something called a writer support group that one of the authors of my show started, where authors from around the country, only 10 or 20, or they'll drop in, just get on and just, I don't know, bitch and moan, or they come up with, something about what's not working. Or anyway, I found out things in there I didn't know about Bookshop and how that works and how to do certain kinds of things. It's all about broadening your base, and y'all bring all different things into this community here. Well, think about how much broader you can be when you bring in more people or connect with others. So number one thing is be creative. Number two thing is just try some things. If they don't work, what's the worst that can happen? So what? Didn't work. Try something else. That's kind of been my mantra in my Act 3, right? I mean, the grass is growing. You might as well try something,
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you, Landis.
Yeah.
Before I'm always mindful of the clock, and because we promised to end at 8 o'clock. I wanted to take a moment. Most of you on the call know Chuck Thurston. Chuck and Heidi are having a bit of a tough time. He cannot be here tonight. They're in a basically assisted living kind of a facility. And Chuck just wanted everyone on the call to know that he's thinking about you guys. And he was in this chair. He was the regional representative for a number of years. Tommy was in that chair. And so just keep him in your thoughts and prayers. I'll post some information about him. I'm sure he would love to drop a line, say hello. Just this writing business is lonely, and it's even lonelier when you're in a facility like that. So it's just, like you said, Landis, just keep lifting each other up through this process. I want to thank everyone on this call. I hope everyone had a chance to share a little bit. If there's something that I missed, if you didn't get a chance and you want to raise your hand and share one more time, but we're coming up on the hour. If not, yeah, are we okay? You have your hand up. Jeannie, you had your hand up?
I did.
What's your?
Well, I just wanted to tell everybody that the manuscript is finished and it's given over to the powers that be, and the illustrations are complete. So looks like we're good to go.
Awesome. Can't wait to see Brutus come to life. There's a podcast waiting to happen, by the way, I can tell you. Brutus the Junkyard Dog, an anger management issue. And Barb Baker, who's on this call, has been above and beyond just helping the beta read and give some feedback. Other folks on this call have given you feedback, so I hope that that's helped the process. Doris, you had your hand up a second ago.
Yes, I wanted to say how nice it is to be back. I have missed the meetings for quite a while, and it was very energizing, and enjoyed it very much. And as you see, I've got a couple of white dogs here that want to get in the picture sometimes. They're like 14 and 15 years old. One has got diabetes and blind, but he gets around really well, and they're not spoiled a bit. But I wanted to share that I've been fighting the COVID-19, not the virus, but the pounds. I've really had to been staying home quite a bit, so I'm having to get out now and be more active. I still haven't published, but I'm still hoping to publish after Vietnam. And I've been writing some odes to my son's cat and my daughter's dog, and excuse me, children's poems, Christian poems, and just about the seashore, just different things. And I think what I'm going to do, my book is getting kind of full, and I think I'm going to have to see about getting them published. And I talked to Vince today a little bit again about the best publishers that's out there. And but thanks so much, and I'll try my best to join you next month. And it's been very nice and to meet and see all of you. Thank you again.
Thank you, Dara. And I just wish I had bought Zoom stock a couple of years ago, but who would have thought we'd be meeting like this?
That's right.
For over 2 years, right?
We have a different car now.
Yeah, really. Well, I'm going to stop the recording, and and again, thanks everyone for being on this call. And